Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more notable names in Pacific Islander and Asian American history. Today, we are looking at Tye Leung Schulze, who was a Chinese American. Um, But yeah, let's get into this. We've got a short introduction from Oregon.gov, sos.oregon.gov, Security Secretary of State. Uh, Leung Schulze, born to a Chinese American family in San Francisco, grew up in a racially segregated society. She and other native-born Americans of Asian descent were forced into ethnically segregated neighborhoods, separate schools, and denied access to many jobs. As a teenager, Leung Schulze escaped an arranged marriage by taking asylum in a Presbyterian mission, and in a time she became an advocate for her community, working with the mission to end sexual slavery and of other Chinese women in the U.S. In 1910, she took the civil service exam and became the first Chinese American woman to work for the federal government. She worked as a translator for detained Chinese immigrants at the Angel Island Immigration Station. And after women won the right to vote in California, she voted in the 1912 presidential primary. She is believed to be the first Chinese woman to vote in the U.S. and perhaps the first ethnic Chinese woman to vote in the world. She continued working as an advocate for women and Chinese Americans in the San Francisco area for the rest of her life. Here's from the National Park Service. She was a civil rights community activist born in San Francisco's Chinatown in 1887. Remember that date, that's important. Like many in the neighborhood, her family was not rich and the house was crowded. She lived with her parents, 7 siblings, and her elderly aunt and uncle. Growing up, she and her siblings experienced segregation at an early age. Local law forced Chinese Americans into separate schools, and after elementary school, there were few options for a girl like Leung. She found a place, however, at a Presbyterian mission under tutelage of Donaldina Cameron, a teacher and local activist. In 1899, her parents arranged a marriage for Leung's older sister to a much older man in Montana. But not willing to accept his match, her sister ran away and with her then boyfriend and left their parents in a tight spot. Unfortunately for Leung, her parents' solution was for 12 to 14-year-old Tye Leung to take her sister's place. Sources differ on how old she was at the time. 12 to 14, that's why we have that difference. Resisting, Leung ran to the only place she felt safe, the Presbyterian mission. Cameron regarded Leung as an escaping slave and provided a new place for her to live and learn. Soon, Leung became a star pupil of Cameron's and worked with her as a translator and interpreter in court as the mission worked to free Chinese women from sex slavery. Perhaps due to these experiences, Leung decided to take the civil service exam in 1910 and became the first Chinese woman employed by the federal government. Assigned to the Angel Island Immigration Station, she worked in the women's quarters on the island and acted as a translator for detained Chinese immigrants. On May the 19th, 1912, she made news once again and became the first Chinese woman to vote in the U.S. and perhaps the first Chinese woman to cast a vote worldwide. She voted in that year's presidential primary along with other California women who were enfranchised by the state in 1911. After voting, Leung Schulze was interviewed about her experience and declared, "My first vote? Oh yes, I thought long over that. I studied. I read all your men who wish to be president. About all your men who wish to be president. I learned about the new laws. I wanted to know what was right, not to act blindly. I think it right we should all try to learn, not vote blindly, since we have been given this right to say which man we think is the greatest. I think, too, that we women are more careful than the men. We want to do our whole duty more. I do not think it is just the newness that makes use like that. It is conscious." While at Angel Island, Leung met Charles Schulze, the man who would become her husband. He worked as an immigration service inspector. In 1913, anti-miscegenation laws banned intermarriage between whites and Asians. Undeterred, the couple went to Washington State, where interracial marriage was allowed, and got married there. Upon their return to California, both were forced to give up their jobs at Angel Island. With some difficulty, they found other work and lived together in California until Charles's death in 1935. His death left Tye to raise their children alone. She found work as a bookkeeper with the San Francisco Chinese Hotel and later as a night shift operator with Pacific Telephone's Chinatown Exchange. She also provided translation services for members of the Chinese community in San Francisco, becoming a community fixture. Once the games were introduced to Chinatown in the 1930s, Leung Schulze made a reputation for herself as a local pinball wizard. In her later years, she continued working as a community advocate in San Francisco. At the age of 61, she was arrested for allegedly driving women to abortion clinics in December of 1948. After an investigation and trial, the charges that against her were dropped, and she lived in San Francisco until her death in March of 1972. So yeah, now let's take a notice here. One of the previous episodes I did was on a Miss Mabel Ping-Hua Lee, who fought for women to have the right to vote nationally, even though she herself could not vote. But there is a difference between Mabel Lee and Tye Leung Schulze. And that is, Mabel Lee was born in China, while Tye Leung Schulze was born in the U.S. Two I don't know if her parents were citizens or were the immigrants. Well, I'm assuming her parents were citizens, but I don't know if they themselves were immigrants or if they had immigration further from before. But Tye was born in the U.S. And thus, even though in the U.S. there was a law, the Chinese Exclusion Act, that prevented immigrants from voting, Chinese immigrants specifically, Tye wouldn't be affected because she was born a citizen. So, yeah. That's the distinct difference between the two women. I want to make that clear because some people may be like, whoa, what? No. Her parents clearly had to be there before 1882 when this Chinese Exclusion Act went into place. Thus, Tye would be born in San Francisco in 1887, 5 years later, but because her parents was already living there, and she was born in the U.S., under which the 14th Amendment guaranteed that made her a citizen. She was able to vote. So I want to make that distinction clear on the two women. They both fought for the same thing, but one was unable to vote just because of, who she was, where she was born, while the other, because she ended up being born in the U.S., she was a citizen. Something as simple as that. And yes, I think if they've lived here and are going through the actual processes of becoming a citizen, of becoming naturalized, they should have the right to vote. Citizens, of course, have the right to vote. I think as long as you're going through the process of naturalization, you should gain the right to vote. Because at that point, you're being put into the system. So you deserve the same rights. Anyway. Now let's look at Wikipedia about Tye Leung Schulze. Born August 24th, 1887 in San Francisco, California. Have an image over there from 1912. Died March 10th, 1972 in San Francisco, California. And was the first Chinese American woman to cast a ballot in a presidential primary election. Let's see. This was stated that she was the first Chinese woman in the history of the world to exercise the electoral franchise, was stated by the San Francisco Call, which was a San Francisco, I'm sure, newspaper of the time. Yeah. Also the first Chinese woman hired to work at Angel Island, where she was a translator for immigrants. So, yeah. They talk about her employment as a translator interpreter. Yeah, immigration station. She also served as an administrative clerk, bookkeeper, and social worker at the San Francisco Chinese Hospital to support her family. when, yeah. Let's talk about the family she had with Charles Schulze. Um, one of the big things was not only was she one of the first to vote as a Chinese woman, the fact that she actually helped fight for suffrage rights, the right to vote. So yeah. San Francisco Examiner stated that Leung was altogether familiar with the political issues involved with the primary presidential election and was interviewed about her experience with her first vote, which we read the quote here already. In 1911, the year before she cast her first vote, California became the sixth state to pass laws that granted equal suffrage after Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Idaho, and Washington. So yeah, California suffrage laws were passed nearly a decade before the actual ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, which granted the right to vote nationally to women. So yeah, certain states would grant voting rights. They weren't. I don't think they were able to actually vote in the actual election, but they could vote in the primaries to kind of help pick who a certain party would put forth. Yeah, Charles Frederick Schulze, while she was working at Angel Island. Anti-miscegenation laws are so fucking stupid. It shouldn't matter your race. If you love someone, you love someone. If you're attracted to someone, you're attracted to someone. It don't matter the race. Of course, Virginia had the the case that would overturn anti-miscegenation laws nationally with Loving v. Virginia. It's where a white man married a black woman. And of course, Virginia didn't allow intermarriage as well. So, a lot of dark history when it comes to the way America has treated people. A lot of people, we want to believe that land of the free, home of the brave, you're free to do what you want, but it's taken a lot to get to this point. And then, of course, you have Trump and Republicans trying to overturn a lot of those rights by going out and taking them away from people. It's like you can't let people be happy if just because you don't agree with something, that don't mean you're the one that's supposed to marry them. That don't mean that's the lifestyle you're supposed to adopt. Let them be happy. But some people can't. They can't stand it. And I don't give a damn if you believe your religion tells you it shouldn't be. Fuck your religion. Fuck it in the face. Anyway, married in October 1913. They would have 4 children, Frederick, Theodore, Louise, and Donaldina, named one of them after her good friend Donaldina that took her in. But because of the anti-miscegenation laws, they were both released from the Angel Island. Schulze went to work shortly as a special patrol officer and streetcar motorman, then working for Southern Pacific Company as an inspector of office machines, and then as a superintendent of service for Columbia Gramophone Company. He would die in 1935. Abortion was illegal. 61-year-old Leung, then 61, along with 4 others, were arrested for their roles in what was believed to be a statewide abortion ring. Leung was tipped off by a San Francisco girl who was flown to Los Angeles for an abortion that cost $400. Pretty penny back in those days. During an investigation and trial, charges against Leung were dropped in September 1948. You know, we know abortions, the legality actually made life easier, better, safer for people. But since they turned it to the states, and many of them try to make it illegal, and even traveling to other states to have abortions illegal, we've had women die because they couldn't get the health care they fucking needed, because these religious goddamn political zealots can go fuck themselves in the ass. They've made the laws that have caused people to die when they needed treatment. Motherfuckers. Anyway. Let's see. She was the youngest of 5 sisters and 2 brothers. Okay, their parents were Chinese immigrants from Guangdong province, which, funny enough, is where... no, she was born in Guangzhou, not Guangdong. Okay, my apologies. Her father was a cobbler, earning $20 a month, while her mother ran a boarding house. The family of 10 and a few other close relatives lived in a cramped 2-room apartment on Ross Alley in San Francisco's Chinatown. Leung was sent to a Presbyterian school to learn English, and was often taken to church meetings, which was her earliest exposures to Christianity. And it's the church made her feel safe, which is why that's where she ran to when her parents were trying to get her to replace her sister and marry this much older man. Yeah. As a teenager, she was placed in an arranged marriage to a man from Butte, Montana. Her older sister, who was originally to be married to the man, had escaped the marriage by running away with her boyfriend. As a result, her parents intended for Leung to marry the same man. At 14, she was saved by the arranged marriage by Donaldina Cameron of the Presbyterian Mission Home, which, if you remember, Presbyterian school, she learned English, so yeah. She became a big pinball master when pinball machines were first introduced into Chinatown in the 1930s. Let's see. Legacy. She was recognized for her contributions to women's history in 1987 in the San Bernardino Sun newspaper. October 2011, the story of Tye Leung Schulze was told through a play starring actress Lily Tung. So yeah. But that gives us a look at who Tye Leung Schulze was. Yeah. Very similar to Mabel Lee, but because of a distinct difference, one had a little more success than the other. But we'll go ahead and end this episode there. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.